The day before my engagement to Leo Maxwell, his beloved ex, Isabel Croft, stood in my way. She was wearing a vibrant red dress, a stark contrast to the frail and sickly image she usually projected. With a confident smile, she proposed a bet. "If you don't want your engagement to him to succeed, then it won't," she said. "If you don't believe me, Miss Vance, just wait and see." As it turned out, she was right. The engagement did not go as planned. Leo got a call that Isabel had suffered a severe depressive episode and tried to take her own life. He lost all composure. While our guests were gathering outside, Leo was in the dressing room, frantically pulling at the tie that matched his black tuxedo. He grabbed his car keys, and as he headed for the door, he threw a single sentence over his shoulder. "I'm sorry, I have to go see her. I'll explain everything to your grandfather when I get back." My heart felt like it had turned to ice. With my makeup only half finished, I stepped in front of him, blocking his exit. "If you walk out that door today," I said, my voice shaking, "we are completely finished." My eyes stung with unshed tears as I stared at him. "Leo, I could overlook this on any other day. But do you have any idea what today is? It's our engagement day." His brow furrowed in annoyance and he snapped at me. "Clara, don't be unreasonable at a time like this. This is about someone's life." He sounded exasperated, as if I were the one being difficult. "An engagement can be rescheduled. I already agreed to marry you. What more could you possibly want? Don't forget, you were the one who begged me for this engagement in the first place." I looked at him, stunned by his words. The strategic alliance between our powerful families had somehow become, in his mind, me, begging him for marriage. So that was how he truly saw me. He didn't bother wasting any more words. He simply pushed me aside and walked out of the room, his assistant scrambling to keep up with him. I stumbled, and the makeup artist and stylist rushed forward to steady me. They exchanged nervous glances, but I was past the point of feeling any shame. He had depression. He attempted suicide. He needed someone. After all these years, what was one more time? The stylist hesitated before asking softly, "Miss Vance, should we still get the dress ready?" I glanced at the custom-made gown hanging in the dressing room, a project a year in the making and worth a fortune. Without a moment's hesitation, I said, "Yes, get it ready." The engagement ceremony went ahead as scheduled. The guests waited patiently, but the bride and groom never appeared on stage. A low murmur began to ripple through the crowd below. Did Leo Maxwell just leave her at the altar again? Clara Vance really has no self-respect. He clearly doesn't love her, yet she keeps clinging to him. Leo and Isabel were the real love story. Isabel just wasn't born with a silver spoon like Clara. If it wasn't for the Vance family's influence, Leo probably wouldn't give her a second look. I heard their whispers and let out a cold, humorless laugh. True love? Years ago, when Leo made a catastrophic business error, Isabel was the first one to sever all ties with him. It was only after my family stepped in and bailed out the Maxwells that she reappeared, feigning depression and suicidal tendencies. "Leo," I thought to myself, "you can't have everything. You can't reap all the rewards and still pretend to be the victim." I took the microphone, gathered the luxurious fabric of my gown, and walked onto the stage alone. I addressed the elders of both families and all the assembled guests with a clear, steady voice. "First, I want to thank all of you for taking time from your busy schedules to attend the engagement ceremony for myself and Leo Maxwell. Leo and I have known each other since we were children, and our families have always shared a close bond. We were meant to step into this new chapter of our lives with the blessings of our loved ones. Unfortunately, it seems Leo is unable to let go of his past with Miss Isabel Croft. Despite our engagement today, he felt it was necessary to go to her side. Since that is his choice, I will grant him his wish. I am now officially declaring that our engagement is void." The room erupted into a frenzy of hushed conversations. Leo really went to find his ex on a day like this? Has he lost his mind? I heard old Mr. Maxwell never really liked Clara and only approved of the marriage for the business alliance. Not liking her is one thing, but running after another woman on your engagement day is just... wow. My grandfather was livid. He shot to his feet, pointing an accusing finger at Leo's grandfather. "So this is the fine grandson you've raised. Do you think you can treat my granddaughter this way just because she's all I have left? Don't you forget who came to my door, begging for Clara to marry into your family?" Leo's grandfather, seated in the place of honor, was deeply humiliated. His face went pale as he slammed his hand on the table and shouted at his son, "Get that worthless son of yours back here right now!" I'll teach him a lesson he won't forget. Leo Maxwell's parents began apologizing profusely, trying to calm both old men down and promising they would bring Leo back immediately. Amid the chaos, one guest seemed to be thoroughly enjoying the spectacle. Lounging casually with a glass of red wine, Julian Thorne watched me with a faint, mocking smile. It seemed that once again, he was getting a front-row seat to my humiliation at the hands of Leo Maxwell. He had witnessed it countless times before, always with that same look of amusement. But this time, I had no intention of competing with him. My eyes met his across the room. This engagement had been the result of months of planning and preparation. The venue was set, and it would be a shame to let it all go to waste. I turned my attention back to the crowd and spoke into the microphone again. "I find myself in need of a groom," I announced. Then, looking directly at him, I said, "Julian Thorne, are you brave enough to come up here?" A collective gasp went through the room. All eyes turned to the man sitting below the stage, the notoriously charming and reckless younger son of the Thorne family. Julian was Leo Maxwell's cousin, his aunt's son. He was known for his flashy sports cars and his freewheeling lifestyle. His parents had passed away when he was young, and no one had ever been able to control him. He had always stayed away from the Maxwell family business, while Leo had been groomed from birth to be the heir. I thought to myself, well, let's show him that anyone can take his place. Julian raised an eyebrow, the corner of his mouth twitching into a small smirk. Under the soft glow of the elegant lights, he slowly rose to his feet. "An invitation from Miss Vance?" "It would be my honor." He shed his usual air of carelessness, appearing sharp and composed as he walked onto the stage under the gaze of every person in the room. Just as he had done in the past, he reached out his hand to me. With a smooth motion, he took the ring box I offered, opened it, and with his slender fingers slid the diamond ring onto my middle finger. The entire exchange was seamless, almost sacred. Then, he stepped closer. I had no idea what he intended to do until the next moment, when he wrapped one hand around the back of my neck and kissed me deeply and forcefully. The kiss was intense and lingered, completely different from his usual playful demeanor. He was serious, so serious that it left me breathless. The guests erupted into a mix of gasps and excited screams. Champagne corks popped, and confetti rained down around us. He leaned in close, his voice a low whisper by my ear, casual yet tinged with amusement. "Clara, you should have chosen me a long time ago. But, better late than never." I saw the wicked, triumphant glint in his eyes. Leo's parents were in a state of panic, muttering to themselves in disbelief. They were furious. Ever since their sister, Julian's mother, had died years ago and old Mr. Maxwell had brought Julian into their home, they had done everything in their power to exclude him. Now, they had to watch as he stole their son's fiancée right out from under them. Old Mr. Maxwell slammed his cane on the floor and shouted, "Enough! Leo has disgraced our family. Aren't you all embarrassed enough? It is our family that is indebted to Clara. Whoever she chooses to be with is a privilege for us." My grandfather just snorted coldly and didn't even allow them to stay for the dinner, promptly kicking them out. The people who had gathered to support Leo, seeing the tide turn so dramatically, quickly began to sidle up to Julian, offering their congratulations. Of course, I hadn't chosen Julian simply for his own benefit. Later that day, I laid out my terms for him clearly. If he helped me push through the business partnership between our two families, I would help him gain control of Maxwell Enterprises. My family's company, Vance Pharmaceuticals, was well established, but I had always wanted to venture into something new, something that appealed to a younger generation. A health-focused beverage brand. That's why I had been working on a collaboration with the beverage division of the Maxwell Corporation, a division Julian was connected to. The board at Vance Corp had never taken me seriously. They were all just waiting for me to fail. If I could successfully finalize this collaboration, I would finally have the results I needed to silence the old guard who saw me as nothing more than a little girl playing at business. Julian's deep, dark eyes were fixed on my face, and I couldn't tell what he was thinking or how much of my plan he had actually absorbed. I shot him a pointed glare. He just smiled silently, then leaned in closer and said gently, "Clara, shouldn't we be discussing our honeymoon now?" "Honeymoon? Are you serious?" I huffed. "Did you even hear a word I just said?" He shook his head. It was typical of him. He never concerned himself with the business side of the Maxwell family, so it would probably take him a while to get up to speed. I decided I would have to help him. Just as I was about to sit him down and explain everything in detail, he suddenly pulled me into his arms with one swift, strong motion. The momentum pressed me tightly against his chest. His face was inches from mine, and his magnetic eyes drew me in until the next kiss landed on my lips. "Teach me, Clara," Julian said softly. "If you teach me, I will learn." "Don't," I began, instinctively trying to push him away. I had only intended to use him as a tool for my revenge against Leo. I never planned for this fake relationship to become anything real. But before I could finish, my words were lost in his kiss. His lips moved against mine, dizzying me until my whole body felt weak. The next thing I knew, I was being lifted into the air. He scooped me up and began walking toward the bedroom. Afraid of falling, I instinctively wrapped my arms around his neck and my legs around his waist. Julian gently laid me on the bed. He knelt on one knee beside me, his warm breath brushing against my cheek. He lifted my chin, looking at me with that familiar glint of mischief in his eyes. "Clara, the best revenge on a man is to forget him completely." I met his gaze, considering his words. Perhaps he was right. We were both adults. There was no need to pretend to be innocent. I closed my eyes, expecting him to go further, but he didn't. Instead, he pressed a soft kiss to the center of my forehead and whispered, "But I will wait until you truly want this." Then, he pulled up the blanket from the side of the bed and gently covered me with it. As if he were coaxing a child, he lightly patted my head. "You must be exhausted today. Get some rest." I opened my eyes, speechless, and gave him a light kick. He burst into laughter that echoed in the room for a long moment before he finally settled down, grabbed another blanket, and lay down quietly beside me. 3 days later, Leo Maxwell finally remembered he had a fiancée. He called me. "When are you coming back?" he asked. "To our home." I almost laughed out loud. "Our home? What home? I was the one who bought that house. I had decorated every room." He hadn't contributed a single cent, and now he had the audacity to call it our home. His voice on the other end of the line sounded strangely hollow, filled with a sense of resentment. "You took everything from the house. Does that mean you're not coming back? You even took the bed. Am I supposed to sleep on the street?" He had it wrong. I didn't just take everything. I sold it all. I had even sold the house itself. The realtor just hadn't had time to change the locks yet. Tugging down the brim of my sun hat, I took a sip of my drink and replied lazily, "Why don't you go back to your precious Isabel? You two can squeeze together on the bed in her rented apartment. If she tries to kill herself again, at least you'll be there in time to save her. Otherwise, what's a doctor to do when the wounds have already healed at the hospital? Die of laughter?" It was always the same routine with her: depression, suicide attempts, a complete lack of originality. But Leo was foolish enough to fall for it every single time. Mentioning Isabel was like flipping a switch. Leo, as expected, exploded. He started yelling over the phone, trying to lecture me. "Our problems are between us. Why are you dragging my cousin into this? Clara, I thought your little act with him was just a game. I'm busy right now. I don't have time to come and get you. You better take the opportunity to come back while you still can. Don't come crying to me when it's too late." What a joke. Who did he think he was, acting as if he were doing me some great favor? Before I could even respond, Julian snatched the phone from my hand. "Hey, cousin," he said in a lazy drawl. "She doesn't need an out. You can go enjoy your time with your precious Isabel. I'll take very good care of Clara." There was a brief silence on the other end, followed by a string of curses from Leo. Julian calmly hung up the phone. He turned to me with a grin and spread his hands. "Your ex-fiancé sure is sensitive. If it were me, the only thing I'd be worried about is whether you're happy." I rolled my eyes. "Stop putting on an act for me." His smile slowly faded. He looked directly at me, reached out, and gently pinched my chin. Then he leaned down and kissed me again, long and deep, until I felt like I might lose my balance. Only then did he release me. "From now on," he said, "don't think about that man in front of me. I get jealous." He added, "Let's go," wrapping his arm around my shoulders as we walked toward a helicopter. Julian flew us up to an altitude of 0 meters, soaring over vast mountain ranges and an endless ocean. In that moment, my world felt expansive and magnificent, filled with nothing but open skies and breathtaking views. There was no more drama weighing on my heart. I felt free, refreshed, and completely at peace. Maybe I should have done this a long time ago. I shouldn't have let myself get so entangled in a pointless love affair. The past few years had drained me, body and soul. I had no energy left to care anymore. Julian Thorne lived up to his reputation as the most playful and flirtatious young man in the Maxwell clan. We stayed abroad for half a month, doing something new and thrilling every single day: hang gliding, surfing, skydiving. For the first time, I realized that my world didn't have to revolve around work or Leo Maxwell or some ridiculous love triangle. As I plummeted through the sky with the wind roaring past my ears, my heart leaped into my throat. But strangely, I felt a surge of life wild, untamed, and real. After being trapped in a world of pressure and routine for so long, this was like breaking free. Romance and betrayal suddenly seemed so small and insignificant. To hell with those dramatic love triangles. I threw my arms wide open and embraced the vastness of the world. When we landed and my feet touched solid ground again, I felt my soul slowly returning to my body. It was as if something new had sprouted inside me, a seed quietly beginning to grow. Julian helped me take off my goggles and gently brushed my messy hair back from my face. "You didn't cry?" he asked, feigning surprise. I joked back, "Did all the other girls you brought here cry?" He sighed dramatically. "She thinks so little of me." His voice then shifted to a more serious tone. "You're the first, and the only one who ever cried on my shoulder until my clothes were soaked." I froze as a memory flooded back to me. It was years ago. I had walked in on Leo Maxwell kissing Isabel Croft, who had just returned from living abroad. They were tucked away in a quiet hallway, kissing as if no one else existed. I had turned to leave and ran right into Julian. He glanced at them, then calmly looked back at me. My tears started to fall immediately. Caught off guard, he had held me tightly and let me cry. Back then, he had asked me, puzzled, "What's so great about Leo Maxwell?" And I didn't have an answer. Who could ever really explain why we fall for someone? Maybe it was because he was the older boy who had always looked out for me when I was young. Or maybe it was because he carried himself with such confidence and charm. In that moment, something in me had responded to him, and that feeling went on to define my entire youth. My happiness and my heartbreak were all tied to him. But the Leo Maxwell of today was no longer the boy I had once loved. I snapped out of the memory and smacked Julian with mock annoyance. "Stop bringing that up!" He winced dramatically and let out a pained cry, but then his usual carefree grin faded. He grew uncharacteristically serious, reached out his hand to me and said, "All right, adventure time is over, Miss Vance. From today on, you begin your new life." I looked at him. The sunlight cast a golden glow around him, and for the first time, I saw what a new life could really look like, reaching out to me with open arms. I took a deep breath and smiled. All right. Word on the street was that Leo Maxwell had been looking for me everywhere. He had even gone to my house several times, only to be thrown out by my grandfather each time. My grandfather had never approved of the way I used to chase after Leo, and now that the tables had turned, he was ecstatic. Leo was apparently beaten so badly by his own grandfather that he was covered in bruises and forced to kneel at home for 3 days straight. Eventually, the old man gave him one last chance to see if he could win me back. It was the same old story, the same old script. I used to love him, so I would forgive him every single time. But not this time. Even if he knelt until he died, I wouldn't spare him a single glance. When Julian drove me home, we were laughing and talking when a dark figure suddenly rushed out from the side. Leo had seen me hugging his cousin goodbye, and his face twisted with rage. He charged at Julian and punched him directly in the face, his eyes red with fury as he shouted, "Do you have no shame? You can hit on anyone you want, but not her. She's your cousin's fiancée. What's the difference between you and a homewrecker?" I instinctively stepped in front of Julian to shield him. "Are you okay?" I asked. Julian straightened up, touched the corner of his mouth, then gently ruffled my hair. "Go wait over there. Be good," he whispered soothingly. Then, he wiped a bit of blood from his lip, lowered his head slightly, and without a moment's hesitation, landed a clean, brutal punch right back at Leo. It was fast and precise. Leo staggered and fell hard to the ground. Julian grabbed him by the collar, slammed him against a wall, and slowly raised his sharp, fox-like eyes. He curled his lips into a wicked smile. Why are you yelling at me, cousin? If Clara didn't like me, would I even have a chance to be the third wheel? If you think I'm in the wrong for being the other man, then why don't you just give her to me? Then I wouldn't be the third wheel anymore. Being the other man is just my way of proving how irresistible I am. Besides, Clara chose me, so who's the side piece now? You are. Julian's delivery was so polished, it sounded like it was straight out of a soap opera. I had no idea where he learned it, but it was so over the top that I almost wanted to find a hole to crawl into. But at least this time, Leo could finally get a taste of what it was like to deal with a manipulative person like his precious Isabel. Leo's pupils were wide with disbelief. He knew what kind of person his cousin was, but he had never realized he could be this shameless. Fuming, Leo flipped Julian over and climbed on top of him, his fist raised, ready to give his cousin a serious beating. I acted on pure instinct. Without even thinking, I swung my designer purse and slammed it right into the side of Leo's head, knocking him to the ground. He clutched his head, groaning in pain, and it took him a long moment to get back up. Leo stared at me in utter disbelief, unable to recover from the shock. "Clara, you actually hit me? For him?" Off to the side, Julian had tumbled into a flower bed and was lying there with a dramatically wronged expression on his face. "Clara," he said pitifully, "did you see how rough he is? My head hurts. I think I need a kiss to get up." Leo's veins bulged with rage at Julian's sickly sweet tone. He stormed toward me, ignoring everything else, and yanked me back. "Don't touch him," he barked. "If you so much as try to help him, Clara Vance, don't blame me for what happens next." I completely ignored him and reached out to help Julian to his feet. Julian leaned on me with exaggerated weakness and threw Leo a smug, taunting look. "Wow, cousin, you're really something else. You won't even let your ex-fiancé help someone up. It's a good thing she didn't choose you. A petty man like you would have driven her crazy." Leo's fists clenched so tightly they trembled. He pointed at Julian, cursing loudly. "He's faking it, and you still believe him? Clara, are you really that desperate for love that you'll take whoever comes along?" Before he could finish his sentence, I slapped him hard across the face. I had been holding that in for a very long time. Smirking coldly, I looked him straight in the eye. "Not just anyone will do. For example, you absolutely will not. Leo Maxwell, did you really think I couldn't live without you? Let me be perfectly clear. I am with your cousin now." I boldly took Julian's hand, making sure Leo saw it. "Now, get lost." Leo refused to believe it. He was convinced that Julian had somehow seduced me and insisted that I needed to open my eyes to the truth. I had no interest in arguing with him. I called for the bodyguards at the front gate. "Someone come and get this stray dog off my property." Julian squeezed my hand in response, glanced at his cousin, and smiled pleasantly. "It's getting cold out here, cousin. Clara and I are going inside now. You should head home too. We wouldn't want you to catch a cold." "No one's going to feel sorry for you." Held back by the guards, Leo completely lost his composure. He howled profanities, then turned and kicked one of the stone lion statues in front of my house. But instead of making a statement, he only ended up hurting himself, grabbing his foot and squatting on the ground for ages, too pained to stand up. From that day forward, the point person for our collaboration with Maxwell Enterprises officially shifted from Leo to Julian. I made the call personally. Old Mr. Maxwell saw how determined I was to cut all ties with Leo and had no choice but to agree. After all, back when Maxwell Enterprises was on the brink of collapse, my family had poured in enormous resources to keep them afloat. Mr. Maxwell still had to take my opinion seriously. With the change in leadership, everything started to run much more smoothly. When I had worked with Leo, he constantly shot down my ideas without even considering them. He would declare things impossible before we even began. And on the rare occasions we did manage to accomplish something, it always fell far short of my expectations. His subordinates treated me with a complete lack of respect, and we had endless arguments about it. Julian, on the other hand, didn't use any of Leo's original team. He quickly assembled a new group of experienced, reliable people who dove straight into the work. I was thoroughly impressed. His vision and decision-making skills were far beyond what I had ever imagined. He could spot potential problems in the project at a glance. It made me realize that I had seriously underestimated him. I used to think he was just a useless playboy. He must have noticed me staring, because he lifted his eyes from his work and grinned. Told you I wasn't going to let you regret it. I folded my arms, letting him see my growing interest. Let's see if you can keep that promise. We finalized our next steps, but just as we were about to move forward, a commotion erupted outside the conference room. Leo Maxwell had forced his way past the security guards and barged into my company's offices. Furious, he slammed a folder down on the table in front of me so hard that it nearly hit my face. At the last second, Julian Thorne threw his arm out to shield me, but the sharp edge of the folder still cut into his forearm. Blood welled up on the spot, and he winced sharply. Leo launched into a tirade. Clara, are you out of your mind? I'm the project lead. When will you finally learn to separate your personal life from business? I ignored him completely. I grabbed Julian's injured arm and called for my assistant to bring a first aid kit. Then I calmly looked at Leo, who was acting like a rabid dog, and said coldly, Well, you're not the project lead anymore. Some people clearly still hadn't gotten the message. I believe I need to remind Mr. Maxwell one more time. From start to finish, the core of this project has always been Vance Corp, not Maxwell Enterprises, and certainly not you. If there's nothing else, kindly see yourself out and close the door on your way. For a moment, Leo looked stunned. He finally seemed to realize that I was the client, the one with the power to change the team, but he wasn't willing to admit defeat just yet. Frowning, he scrambled to shift the blame onto me. All of this is because I went to check on Isabel? Are you seriously blowing this so far out of proportion? She's not in good health, and I promised her mother I would take care of her. Why do you always have to overthink things? You have money, family, love, and me. Why can't I show her even a little bit of kindness? His shameless excuses disgusted me. Every time I heard him talk like that, it made my skin crawl. I stared at his hypocritical face and gave a cold laugh. What would you say? Even if I caught you two lying in bed together, you'd probably claim you were just having a conversation under the covers. And let's be realistic. If it weren't for you, Isabel wouldn't even be qualified to know me. Whether she lives or dies has absolutely nothing to do with me. Leo Maxwell, who do you think you are? Do you really believe you're worth fighting over? If you can't give me your undivided love and attention, then get the hell out of my life. He stood there frozen, completely stunned. After all, I used to fall into his traps so easily, always rushing to prove that I wasn't jealous of Isabel. But now, the cold indifference in my tone left him completely at a loss for words. That's when Julian, ever the opportunist, leaned against my shoulder and sighed dramatically. Clara, ever since my cousin hit me a few days ago, I still haven't been feeling well. I was only trying to quietly care for you. I don't understand why he's overreacting so much. Of course, Julian knew exactly how to provoke his cousin. Leo's rage reignited instantly. He took a step forward, not to hit me because he wouldn't dare, but to hit Julian, his shameless little cousin. But before he could land a punch, the security guards I had called ahead of time stepped in and blocked his path. I don't want any unauthorized personnel barging in here anymore, I said. The guards immediately escorted a protesting Leo out of the room. It was the first time that the high and mighty Leo Maxwell had been kicked out in front of so many people. Humiliated, he lashed out one last time as he was being dragged away. Clara, you remember this! No matter what happens, Maxwell Enterprises will never fall into the hands of an outsider like him. I gave you the chance to become Mrs. Maxwell. You were the one who turned it down. Don't come crawling back to me when you regret it. I didn't care in the slightest. I closed the door behind him and turned back to the room. Let's continue the meeting. As for who would end up regretting this, we would just have to wait and see. After that incident, Leo tried to sabotage our project from behind the scenes, but Julian effortlessly handled every single problem he created. The staff at Maxwell Enterprises, who were usually arrogant and dismissive, surprisingly fell in line under Julian's leadership. I began to suspect that there was much more to him than I had ever realized. Maybe he had just been playing dumb all along, hiding his sharp claws behind a lazy grin. He really was something else. Julian, how many more surprises are you hiding from me? I thought to myself. With Leo out of the picture, our partnership with Maxwell Enterprises finally gained traction. The previous manager, Leo, had spent more time chasing after Isabel than actually doing his job. His team was constantly pushing back or passing the blame around. Now, things were completely different. After months of relentless effort, our wellness herbal tea product officially launched. Our marketing team targeted young consumers and played up the product's health benefits. With a savvy internet strategy, we turned it into a viral sensation. In that first month alone, we hit over $1 billion in revenue. The response was explosive. Both my grandfather and old Mr. Maxwell attended our celebration banquet. They praised us young people for our bold ideas and flawless execution, saying it was finally time to trust the next generation to take over. Leo Maxwell, on the other hand, used the excuse of being unwell and didn't show up. I heard that in private he was so furious that he completely trashed his entire office. He never imagined that the project he had looked down on would explode with such incredible success. The upper management at Vance Corp stopped underestimating me just because I was a woman. They stopped calling me Little Miss and started addressing me respectfully as President Vance. Their attitudes had changed completely. During the celebration, Julian Thorne raised a glass to me. I smiled and toasted him back, then invited him to stick around because the best part was still to come. I wasn't the type to make empty promises. When I said I would help him take over Maxwell Enterprises, I meant every single word. He clinked his glass with mine and nodded. I've always believed in smart women. Leo had tried multiple times to sabotage our partnership and had failed miserably. Meanwhile, his own work was falling apart. He spent all day wrapped up in his dramatic romance with his precious Isabel. Every time she had a supposed crisis, he would rush home to comfort her, leaving huge holes in his professional responsibilities. A few of his mistakes were so serious that they almost caused major financial losses for the company. Old Mr. Maxwell didn't say anything, so Leo assumed he was still safe. After all, he believed he was the only rightful heir to Maxwell Enterprises, the eldest grandson, the future leader. In his mind, no matter how much Julian achieved, he would never be able to measure up. Watching his pathetic drama unfold from the sidelines, I couldn't help but sneer. I was genuinely relieved that I had woken up in time and avoided being dragged down by such an arrogant, brainless man. After everything that had happened, I realized that I didn't need love as much as I needed someone who shared my vision, someone who would stand beside me in the trenches, building something real. At that moment, I looked across the room at Julian Thorne, casually raising a glass and chatting with the business elites at the gala. Maybe, just maybe, this mistake of a partnership could turn into something truly worthwhile. Old Mr. Maxwell's 80th birthday banquet was a grand affair. The venue was packed with luxury cars, and influential figures from every industry had come to pay their respects. Everyone was dressed to the nines, the men in sharp suits and the women in elegant gowns, all lining up with their expensive gifts. His own son was useless, and his grandson was off playing house. At 80 years old, the old man still hadn't officially retired. Rumor had it that tonight's birthday banquet was when he would finally announce his successor. In the past, I had always attended these events with Leo. This time, I walked in with Julian. Our arrival caused quite a stir. The news of our engagement switch had spread far and wide by now. Leo and Isabel arrived a few minutes after us. She was all dolled up in a striking red dress, with her hair swept up in an elaborate style. Anyone who didn't know better might have thought she was the guest of honor tonight. Clinging to Leo's arm, she beamed at me smugly. She was clearly waiting for old Mr. Maxwell to name Leo as the successor so she could rub it in my face. All eyes turned toward us, eager to witness a front-row showdown. Isabel couldn't resist the urge to stir the pot. She glanced at Julian, then said, "Miss Vance, it seems like your feelings for Leo didn't run very deep, huh?" It didn't take you long to move on. Before I could even respond, Julian beat me to it. He swirled the red wine in his glass lazily, gave her a flat look, and fired back with his trademark nonchalant tone. "Oh, Isabel Croft is still alive? Didn't they already issue a critical condition notice? I guess that doctor was a quack. You better find a different hospital next time. And what? My cousin didn't give you any money? You had to show up in a knockoff dress?" Isabel had clearly picked the wrong target. She didn't know that Julian never held back. He didn't care about your age, your gender, or your social status. He would verbally roast a barking dog until it whimpered away with its tail between its legs. Her face turned bright red, her neck strained, but since what he said was true, she didn't dare argue too loudly. She turned to Leo with her best pitiful expression. "Leo, I didn't. You know me." Isabel had been mooching off Leo for years, and yet she still refused to spend her money on a real designer dress. She used to show up at events wearing cheap knockoff versions of my outfits, just to compete with me. Leo, trying to save face, would always say that my dress didn't look good on me and urge me to wear something else. This time was no different. Leo pulled her protectively into his arms, glared at us, and snapped, "Julian, that's enough! Watch your mouth!" He stepped in front of us, demanding an apology. "It's one thing to insult me, but don't you dare bully Isabel. You owe her an apology, both of you." Julian and I exchanged a glance as if we had just heard the funniest joke in the world. My red lips curled into a cold smile. "The dead don't deserve respect, and neither do you, Leo," Leo instantly snapped. In a desperate attempt to save face, he grabbed my arm and threatened me. "Clara Vance, if you don't apologize today, the moment I become chairman, I will cancel all cooperation with Vance Corp." Before he could finish his threat, I spun around and kicked him hard in the knee. He had injured that same leg before, so he dropped to the floor with a loud thud, half kneeling behind me. Janice, standing next to him, gasped and instinctively shielded her stomach. All the onlookers held their breath, covering their mouths and whispering among themselves. "So this is the Clara Vance everyone said was obsessed with Leo Maxwell. If it weren't for all these people here, I swear she would have killed him. I knew it! There's no way a real heiress like her would ever fall for someone like him." I pulled my leg back and gave Leo and Isabel a sweet smile. "I'll be waiting to see how this plays out." Then I linked arms with Julian and walked off, leaving them behind. Julian leaned in close and murmured with a smirk, "So cool, Clara." I raised my glass to clink with his. "Next time, don't test me. It won't end nearly as gently." Since it was old Mr. Maxwell's birthday, Leo didn't dare make a scene. He looked around at the crowd and, in the end, could only swallow his anger. Later that evening, a famous celebrity took the stage to sing in celebration. Not wanting to miss her moment in the spotlight, Isabel got up too and performed a song for the old man. Word had it that she was pregnant, and the two of them were hoping that this public gesture would win over Mr. Maxwell, betting that giving him a great-grandchild would soften his heart. Their plan was clear: charm the old man, get him to approve their marriage, and name Leo as the official successor. But old Mr. Maxwell barely glanced at them before his face turned cold. "Is there no proper stage outside for you to perform on? Is it you who doesn't know the proper occasion? Or is it Leo?" Though his voice wasn't loud, the authority in it was undeniable. The event staff immediately picked up on his meaning. They adjusted the program and escorted a stunned Isabel off the stage mid-performance. She glanced in my direction, assuming that I had spoken ill of her to the old man. Her eyes burned with resentment as she shot me a look filled with hatred, then turned to Leo, playing the victim and clinging to his arm. Leo didn't dare disobey his grandfather and quietly asked her to step down, promising to bring her over to greet the old man later. When it was our turn to present our birthday wishes, Julian spoke with his usual charm, coaxing a wide smile from old Mr. Maxwell. The old man looked at us with satisfaction and nodded. "If this boy ever dares to bully you, Clara, I'll back you up," I smiled. "He won't. Whether it's in our work or in our personal lives, we get along just fine." The old man lifted his cloudy eyes and stared at Julian, as if he were seeing a reflection of his long-lost daughter. When it came time for Leo and Isabel to approach, Mr. Maxwell stood up and said, "I'm tired. There's no need for outsiders." Then he looked at Julian. "You handle the guests, will you? I'm going to rest." Just as he turned to leave, he paused and glanced back at Leo. "I heard that Miss Croft isn't in great health and you've been running between home and the company to take care of her. Since that's the case, Leo, why don't you take some time off? Stay home and look after her." Leo's face darkened on the spot. Isabel looked equally uncomfortable, clinging to his arm in confusion. Once upon a time, Leo had been the old man's favorite grandson. He believed that they were the true Maxwell family. He thought that by bringing a great-grandchild into the picture, he could win back the old man's heart and secure his place as the successor. But now, it was painfully clear where the old man stood. As Mr. Maxwell turned everything over to Julian, his simple instruction to handle the guests was essentially a public declaration of who would lead Maxwell Enterprises in the future. Leo looked over at me and Julian, his face twisted with barely restrained hatred. I met his gaze, raising my chin in defiance. Hadn't I told him before? The successor would be whoever I chose. Leo had always assumed that Maxwell Enterprises had outgrown its dependence on Vance Corp and had never taken us seriously again. But what he didn't know was that back then, my grandfather had only agreed to help the Maxwell family on one condition: that I, Clara Vance, would personally choose the next successor. This very morning, my grandfather had already had a private conversation with old Mr. Maxwell, warning him not to make a foolish mistake in his old age. The old man may no longer be involved in the daily operations, but I was certain he knew exactly what had been happening within the company. And for the long-term future of Maxwell Enterprises, he would make the right call. Leo Maxwell was officially removed from the company's headquarters. Old Mr. Prophet, Maxwell said that his decision-making was too reckless and told him to spend a few years gaining experience at the lower-level branches before even thinking about returning. His original position was handed over to Julian Thorne. Once Julian took the reins, he began systematically dismantling Leo's influence. Negative news started surfacing about all the projects Leo had previously overseen. Even the car accident that had killed Julian's parents years ago was dragged back into the spotlight. Years ago, the youngest daughter of the Maxwell family had made a name for herself in the business world and was widely seen as the next in line to inherit the family empire. But a sudden car crash had taken both her and her husband's lives, leaving behind their only son, Julian. There had always been rumors that their deaths weren't just an accident. Some even speculated that Leo's parents were behind it. After all, they were ordinary and unremarkable with no real ability to stand out. If they didn't eliminate the sister, they would always be stuck living in her shadow. My grandfather had suspected foul play back then, but had chosen not to make any public accusations. Still, his attitude toward Leo's father spoke volumes. I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. One evening over dinner, I warned Julian not to be too hasty. Leo's family, they're more dangerous than you think, but Julian just smiled and brushed it off. Are you worried about me? Even in a situation like this, he still had the nerve to tease me. I pretended to be annoyed, and he chuckled softly, his lips curling into that familiar grin. I'm really glad you care about me. In the background, a violinist began to play a soft melody. Julian stood and extended a hand toward me. Miss Vance, may I have this dance? His eyes sparkled with humor and something deeper, more serious. He was as gentlemanly and graceful as ever, just like back then. It reminded me of a charity gala years ago where Leo had humiliated me by choosing to dance with Isabel in front of everyone. That night, it had been Julian who stepped in to save my pride. Wearing a classic tailcoat, standing tall and handsome, he had offered me his hand with a soft smile and invited me to dance. That evening, he had stolen the spotlight from Isabel and brought me back into the center of attention. I wasn't very good at dancing, but he had guided me gently, helping me to relax and encouraging me to trust him. It was the first time I had felt truly light, genuinely happy. My smile that night had been brighter than usual. I still remember how he had leaned down slightly and asked, "Was it worth it?" I had stubbornly replied, "It's none of your business." Don't meddle. That's why. For years after that, he always watched my entanglement with Leo with that same half-smiling, half-pitying expression. Now, swaying in his arms once more, with his nose nearly brushing against mine, he said softly, "Have you ever considered that maybe I liked you back then?" Then he paused and shook his head. "No, even earlier. Do you remember the first time we met?" A wave of childhood memories rushed over me. The first time I met him was right after he returned to the Maxwell family home. Some kids from another family were bullying him, mocking him for not having parents. I understood that feeling of helplessness. I had lost my own parents too, so I stepped up and chased them off. My grandfather had punished me for fighting, smacking my palms with a ruler. The moment I remembered, my eyes widened. Was this some classic case of the suspension bridge effect? But we were just little kids back then. The music softened, and that's when he kissed me, gently but deeply. "Miss Vance?" He murmured, "It really did take you a long time to look back, but that's okay." I waited. Only then did my face flush, a wave of heat rushing up my neck before I could stop it. Later, while I was at work, my left eyelid started twitching uncontrollably. Something felt deeply wrong, as if something terrible was about to happen. A phone call popped up on my screen. When I answered, a stranger on the other end told me that Julian Thorne had been in a serious car accident. He was in the hospital. Was history repeating itself? Knowing what kind of petty, vindictive person Leo Maxwell was, I wouldn't put anything past him. My knees nearly buckled. I grabbed my keys and rushed out of my office, racing to the hospital. He couldn't be gone. He just couldn't. Just as I arrived, I saw a stretcher being wheeled by, covered in a white sheet. A police officer was approaching the doctor, whispering something. My heart dropped into my stomach. I just knew Julian had been hurt. I ran toward the stretcher, panic tightening its icy grip around my chest, tears blurring my vision. All I could think about were the quiet, happy moments I had shared with him over these past few days. He was the one who had pulled me up on stage to save me from humiliation. He was the one who had flown me high above the clouds. He was the one who provoked my ex-fiancé just to cheer me up. I don't know how long I had been crying, lost in my grief, when I suddenly felt a gentle tap on my shoulder. Covered in tears and snot, I turned around, and there he was. He had a light scratch on his forehead, his hands in his pockets, smirking at me. "Who are you crying for?" he asked. "If it's for your ex, I might get jealous." That infuriating smirk was back on his face. I ran straight into his arms and he hugged me tightly. He was okay. This man who raced cars for fun had once again walked away from a disaster, but the people behind the accident were not going to get off so easily. It turned out that Julian had already had the would-be assassins arrested and turned over to the police. He had been baiting Leo's faction for days, squeezing their influence and pushing them to the brink of panic just to force them to expose themselves. And sure enough, they had snapped. Afraid that the truth about the murder of Julian's parents years ago would finally come to light, they had resorted to the same dirty tricks again. This time it was a car crash. Leo's father, along with Leo himself, was taken in for questioning. At first, they denied everything, but in the face of the overwhelming evidence Julian had gathered, they finally caved. Isabel, seeing that Leo was in serious trouble, panicked. She got rid of the baby overnight and tried to flee the country, but the police stopped her at the airport. Someone had reported her for fraud, and it turned out that all the money she had been hoarding was part of her escape plan. She admitted everything without a hint of shame. She had never loved anyone. She had only ever loved money. After I had cried myself out, something suddenly dawned on me. I turned to Julian. "Back then, when you agreed to help me, did you already plan to use me?" He wiped the tears from my cheeks and shook his head gently. "No. Taking over Maxwell Enterprises has been my plan for years," he said softly. "I've been preparing for this for 5 years. Didn't you notice that most of the company already belongs to me? So even if you had chosen him, I still had my ways to bring him down. I had noticed that people listened to him more than they ever listened to Leo. His voice was soft, as if he were handling something precious. I was going to wait until I had secured my position before I tried to steal you away from his side. But in the end, fate helped me out and brought you back to me early." He pulled me into his arms again, holding me tight, and kissed me gently on the forehead. That night, after my shower, I lay down in bed. Julian leaned against the doorframe, tilted his head, and asked playfully, "Miss Vance, are you sure you're in the right room?" I glared at him and threw back the covers, ready to leave, but he crossed the room in a few quick steps and grabbed my wrist, holding me in place. He leaned in close, his breath tinged with a faint, minty scent that wrapped around me. Closing his eyes, he kissed me. "This sort of thing," he whispered, "should come from me." "Clara," he murmured against my lips. "I'll make sure you're happy." I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him back, telling him through my actions that I was willing. The warmth of his palm pressed against my skin, sending shivers through me and making my heart race wildly. And I whispered back to him, "I am happy."